And I would like, therefore, to take this opportunity to say that I, Major General Philip Effiong, officer administering the government of the Republic of Biafra, now wish to make the following declaration: that the Republic of Biafra hereby ceases to exist.
Please join me in welcoming to the show Professor Philip Effiong. Welcome to the show, Prof.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
When your father became Ojukeu's deputy, how did you receive the news? What changed?
It really didn't come as a surprise. I don't know if I remember an instance where my father was declared second in command. I always knew my father was a senior officer because he was among the first generation of military officers in Nigeria. But it was very traumatic. Regardless of what you see on that screen, I'm my father's son. I know what that situation, what emotionally and psychologically, what it was like.
On this day, 15th of January 1917, the then head of state of the Biafran Republic located in West Africa declared the surrender of the Biafran Republic to the then military junta of Nigeria located in Lagos, its capital. His name is Major General Philip Effiong, the then head of state of Nigeria, after General Ojukeu left the leadership for him and went to Ivory Coast. This is the story of Biafra. The Nigerian Un-Civil War, I call it Un-Civil War because there was nothing civil about that war. The Nigerian Un-Civil War, the Biafran War for its self-determination and freedom, and etc. What do you know about the war? What have you heard about the war? Do you want to know more deep analysis and detailed things about the war? Listen to me, lend me your ears and listen attentive as I walk you through the path of history, to whom it may concern. Ironsi thinker of Africa, Prince Chimaobi Prince, to whom it is given, since it's expected anti-monopoly capitalism. So we will start from, what is Biafra? How? What brought about Biafra? How was it declared? Who declared it? Where? When? Why? What caused the Nigerian Un-Civil War? Now let us start with this. The causes of the Nigerian Un-Civil War, the Biafran War for Freedom. It all started from the illegal creation of the company, Royal Niger Company of Britain, today currently known as Nigeria. It was formerly called the Royal Niger Company, when George Mangodi sold it to the then colonial empire of the British, and he amalgamated the northern and the southern parts to form Nigeria. That was the beginning of the Biafran issue.
Will be the rivalry between the western and the eastern regions.
This is Chief Obafemi Awolowo, who is the leader of the western region of Nigeria, which has just celebrated its self-government. Not complete independence, but self-government within the Federation of Nigeria. Do you think that Nigerians are beginning to think of themselves now as one nation?
Indeed, they have begun to think of themselves as citizens of this great country. And all enlightened Nigerians are determined to ensure that Nigeria remains united.
But by amalgamating people without their consent, without their knowledge, you just joined over 250 ethnic groups together. So, in 1966, there was a coup executed by almost every section of the country, Nigeria, and some politicians, some military officers of Nigeria were assassinated, but majorly those assassinated was from the north. Majorly those that participated in the January coup was from the eastern part of Nigeria. But every other part of Nigeria had their representatives assassinated or participated in the January coup. So because of that, there was the July rematch, July 29, 1966.
After Nigeria's second military coup of July 1966, we saw the deaths of his first military president and that of over 200 officers from the eastern region. The future of the country after 6 years of independence was anything but promising. To make matters worse, in the months following the coup, a series of pogroms arose in the northern region that led to the deaths of over 30,000 Easterners, particularly of the Igbo ethnicity. Soon, many of the surviving Easterners began to return to the east with horrific tales of what they had witnessed in the north. Exactly how many refugees poured into the eastern region between mid-September and 31st of December 1966 will never be precisely known. Many have estimated it to be between 1 and 2 million people from the north, and half of that from the other two regions.
The Igbos were targeted because they majorly participated in the coup, and they were targeted in almost part of the country, Nigeria, except the east, which was their home. They were targeted first of all starting from May 1966, when Ironsi unified Nigeria into a unitary system and abolished the federal system of government to enable him rule and promised to bring it back once he restores normalcy to the country. 24th of May 1966, which was the Decree 14 of the unification of Nigeria as a unitary state. Remember, during the coup of July 1966, over 300 Igbo military officers were assassinated all over Nigeria. So because of that, the then military governor of the Eastern Region, Lieutenant Colonel Ojukeu, said that the state must protect its people, otherwise there will be consequence for that action if the state failed to protect its people. The then head of state, Yakubu, who Ojukeu saw at that time as his junior, refused to take orders from Yakubu because Ojukeu thought that he himself, Ojukeu, was senior and superior to Yakubu. Ojukeu said that his people should go back to their various business places all over Nigeria, that nothing like that will happen again. And on October 7, 1966, after that agreement was had that his people will be protected all over Nigeria, they should go back. On October 1966, there was a mass slaughtering of the Easterners. They were targeted, they were genocided upon, they were slaughtered in thousands. And Ojukeu got very, very angry that his people were murdered again, which he later told in his later age in life, said that the worst mistake he ever made was asking his brothers and sisters to go back to Nigeria when he had agreement with Gowon that his people will be protected. And on the 4th and 5th of January 1967, that is the following year, all this happened in 1966, General Ojukeu retired and is late today, and Yakubu Gowon, the then head of state of Nigeria, met in Abuja, Ghana to meet the then head of state of Ghana, General Ankara, to discuss about the anarchy and the uprising in the country, Nigeria, as of then.
The records are there. In fact, only about 2 weeks ago, I saw a set of the records again. The transcripts are available. But we talked about the Nigerian situation. And certainly, at the end, everybody says, oh, you told them this, you did that. The fact was that our case was so clear that I actually believed at the end of Aburi that the problem was not Gowon, but probably some ambassadors in Lagos who were pressing for something else. Because we understood each other. We agreed on every single point. The drafting was, in fact, my chief secretary with 2 other chief secretaries from the other side. They said, no. And drafted and agreed. We looked at it, we agreed. General Ankara read over the whole report again to us at the end. Asked us if we wanted to amend anything. No. At the end of all that, the position was so good that actually Ankara drove Jack, Gowon, and myself to the airport. Jack was sitting on his left, I was sitting on his right. He was in the middle. And in the course of that journey, at the point, General Ankara shook his head and said, oh, thank you. Thank you. If only we can go on like this, everything would be all right. I believe I was the one. As I do now from time to time, I go for the dramatic. Suddenly I picked up Gowon's hand, put it on Ankara's lap, brought my other hand, placed it on it, and I said, General, sir, hold us together, I want to say something. So General Ankara put his hand on top of the 2 hands, and I said, General, I want to assure you that I am totally satisfied with everything we said. I will even go further and say to you something I did not say at the conference, and that is that once we have implemented everything we have said, I would ask you for one favor and one favor only, and that would be to be the one to propose Jack Gowon as a head of state of Nigeria.
It was a 2-day conference of peers and old mates, but its aftermath produced even further controversy.
when we came back, and Ojukeu did not go to make the statement he made first, virtually giving the impression that we've agreed for a confederation to move apart, etc., which was really not in exactly that. If I had had the opportunity to make my broadcast in the first, because that was the agreement, not for him to make the broadcast first, then if I had committed myself to what he said, then there wouldn't have been any problem. But he went and said certain things that certainly looked wrong, and therefore we saw in practically everything he did, I think it was to play up to the gallery, not being sincere.
At Aburi, yes, we agreed on area commands for the armed forces. At Aburi, we agreed that the police force will be decentralized. We agreed on those. Yes. We agreed even to show that we didn't separate. At Aburi, we also agreed on certain revenue formula. That's what happened at Aburi. Aburi again, because I always end up, this sounds odd today, but I always end up by saying I must have been naive, because I believed actually that would be the end. I'll confess to you, when I got back to Enugu, oh yes, I had a party, believing that probably the danger was over. That's what we thought. Until they then began to deny everything. It was the denial of Nigeria that made me publish the tapes of Aburi, because we had insisted that each one should have a set of tapes. Everybody talks about confederation. Go and look at the transcript. There is no time that the word confederation came from my lips.
In broad terms, Aburi changed the title of head of state from Supreme Military Commander to Commander-in-Chief. It gave the regions control over internal affairs, and concurrence of each region was now required for any decision affecting the whole.
So, because of that, there was anarchy in the country. All sorts of things were going on. The Igbos were still being massacred. Obafemi Awolowo went. There was imminent. The Biafran declaration was imminent because the federal government of Nigeria had refused to protect the Easterners, not just the Igbos, but the Easterners. They were being targeted and murdered anywhere they are found. Why Chief Awolowo went to the eastern part of Nigeria to plead with Ojukeu not to declare Biafra but to make peace. Let them gather on the round table. Ojukeu said that he should see the dead bodies, lifeless bodies, and heads of their brothers and sisters without heads being brought back from all parts of Nigeria to the east through trains loaded with lifeless bodies of their brothers and sisters. In this one, they are going to continue expressing in Nigeria. No, it won't happen. I have to do my duty as a governor governing my people, because I have the breast and length of my people at heart. Because of that, Chief Awolowo had nothing to justify his claim that Ojukeu or his plea with Ojukeu to remain in Nigeria because of how his people were being murdered. The Easterners were being murdered. Because of that, the Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka also went to do his own, and when he came back, government of Yakubu arrested him and imprisoned him before the war. So before Chief Awolowo was released on the 4th of August 1966, Ojukeu had an agreement with him because Ojukeu was actually the person that released him, because he was under the custody of Ojukeu in Calabar prison, not the custody of Gowon. So Ojukeu had an agreement with him. I didn't arrest you at the first place, I didn't imprison you. Let us make peace. Once I release you, get back to Lagos, go and declare the Oduduwa Republic, and we will declare the Biafran Republic. Let the North go. The North can't fight us all alone. When you have declared yours, I have declared my own state. They had such agreement, but Ojukeu, mainly getting to Lagos, Gowon offered him finance minister of the federation. He took of Nigeria. Chief Awolowo took the position and started working against the agreement he first of all had in the east with Ojukeu. And Ojukeu got angry. Both of them started working against him. What happened? The chaos and uprising anarchy continued until the killings of Ojukeu's people persisted. What happened when Gowon wanted to weaken the authority of the governor of the Eastern region, Lieutenant Colonel Ojukeu, but he decided to create small states from the Eastern region. That led to the creation of the river states, different from the East Central states, 3 major states. On this day, 29th of May 1967. And because of the creation of state, Ojukeu got angry, and 3 days later, on the 30th of May 1967, Lieutenant Colonel Chimaobi Ojukeu, after his consultation with his people that were forcing him to declare Biafra at the East Assembly Forum of the Elders, Dr. Frank Opigo from the Ijaw part of the Eastern region, suggested the name Biafra, and on the 30th of May 1967, Lieutenant Colonel Chimaobi Ojukeu stood firmly behind a microphone in a radio station located in Enugu, the then capital city of the Eastern region, and declared that by the power conferred on him as the governor of the Eastern region of Nigeria, he hereby declared the secession of the eastern part of Nigeria to become the Federal Republic of Biafra, and any attempt to cross the sovereignty of the Republic of Biafra shall be dealt with decisively. He made those declarations behind the microphone, and London was in panic because of the radio broadcast. London was in panic because their oil in the eastern oil-rich region was at stake, and they started doing that declaration of the Republic of Biafra pained those in London and England more than how it pained those in Lagos and Kaduna. If you don't know, I want you to know that was why the then Prime Minister of Britain, named Harold Wilson, then had to sponsor a war against the newly created Republic of Biafra, formerly called the Eastern part of Nigeria. He sponsored the head of the government of Nigeria as of then in Lagos, headed by Yakubu Gowon.
The purpose of your present visit is very clear, and I look forward to having fruitful discussions. We are not coming to Nigeria to mediate in the civil war.
The purpose in coming, as you have said, Your Excellency, is not to seek to interfere in matters which can be settled only by Nigerians.
After the declaration of the new states of Biafra on 30th of May 1967, barely 2 months later, on 6th of July 1967, the same year, Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon declared a police action on the newly declared Republic of Biafra, and the Nigerian armed forces burst into the new Biafran Republic and started bombarding everywhere while the Biafrans tried to resist.
This part of the country, what used to be Eastern Nigeria, because the people from here, from Biafra, that is the old Eastern Nigeria, very go-ahead people. Quite a lot of these were killed during the July program. And I myself, I'm not an Igbo man, but I was to be killed also, and I just managed to escape. And a few of the officers escaped, but very many were killed. Those that were killed came from what was then Eastern Nigeria. For instance, Major Rock is not an Igbo man, but he was killed. He was killed in Kaduna. Major Kanam was killed in Lagos, and he is not an Igbo man.
The war aim of Biafra is purely to prevent ourselves being slaughtered, nothing more. We haven't got the sophisticated war aim of Nigeria to counter, to overrun, to do something or the other. For us, it's merely to prevent. And if anybody is going to judge our success and failure in this war, it will have to depend on how much we have prevented the enemy from killing us.
That plunged into a very hard anarchy, because what Gowon called police action in 1967, July 6th, plunged into what we know as today as the Civil War of Nigeria, the Nigerian Un-Civil War, that is what I call it. When the Biafran War persisted, as they were powerless as of them, the then Prime Minister of British government had to align himself with other major world powers like America and majorly the USSR.
Председателем Совета Министров СССР Косыгиным, министром иностранных дел СССР Громыко, министром обороны СССР Гречко и главой государства и федерального военного правительства, главнокомандующим вооруженными силами Федеративной Республики Нигерия генералом Якубу Гавоном. В ходе переговоров был всесторонне обсужден ряд важных вопросов, связанных с дальнейшим развитием и углублением советско-нигерийского сотрудничества в различных областях. Переговоры проходили.
Leader, the head of the USSR as of then, is the General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev. In 1958, Leonid Brezhnev started releasing their fighter jets, bombers, flying jets, bombers to the Egyptian pilots, and they started bombarding the Republic of Biafra on behalf of the federal government of Nigeria.
I will use force to maintain it, and I'm afraid the time has come.
Nigerian jets dropped a bomb nearby. What targets are they attacking? Are they attacking military targets, or are they attacking defenseless civilians?
For the bomb, you've seen it here. These are shrapnels from it. Normally, the Nigerians attack civilians in marketplaces. Normally, they bomb hospitals,
Indeed, this last one, the aim was quite clear. It was a missionary hospital, a school of theology run by the missionaries. They saw it, and the bomb dropped. Luckily this time, it did not cause a lot of damage. But there is a catalogue of hospitals. In fact, they've been going systematically, hitting at hospitals, schools, markets. Indeed, whenever you hear that a British plane or a Russian plane has been over, run by the Nigerians, then you are pretty certain it's going to hit a hospital or a church or
They are pursuing us, killing us. They are killing our parents, our brothers, our fathers, and even ourselves.
I fled from Obinomba, Nigeria, to Onitsha, Biafra.
Massive killing of the Easterners and the North. Perhaps we would have had no civil war.
Mr. Forsyth, you claim that what's happening in Biafra is genocide and massacre on a very large scale. What evidence do you have for this?
It's mainly threefold, partly my own eyewitness experiences. I followed the Biafran army very closely on a number of occasions. At one occasion, at Onitsha, I came across 300 members of the Apostolic Church at Onitsha slaughtered by the Federal 2nd Division.
Did you actually see these bodies?
Yes, I helped clear them out of the road. The Biafran army was so shocked they wouldn't march past them. It took us 18 hours to clear the bodies out of the way. And they'd all had their hands tied behind their backs and been shot at close range. On another occasion...
Did you count these bodies?
Personally, one by one, no. The estimate was 300. I think it was a fairly fair estimate. They were piled as high as a man's shoulder, like logs stacked on the roadside. On another occasion, a man whom I know was a photographer working for the Biafrans took a photograph very shortly after a village had been completely wiped out. And you can see still the bodies lying around the market square where they were shot down. Secondly, from eyewitness sources, survivors of the massacres. And thirdly, from interrogations of federal prisoners who, when the Igbo captors have been sent out of the way, admit, quite frankly, that they are there to wipe out Igbo. That's what they admit.
But what do they say that their orders were?
They don't mention what their orders were. They don't seem to be taking any notice of orders anymore. They're taking frightful casualties, and in revenge for these casualties, they seem to be going on a blood rampage, which has nothing to do with what Lagos is saying about the rehabilitation of the Igbo and how they're all going to be treated as equal citizens of Nigeria. In other words, there is such a disparity between what Lagos is saying on the one hand and what the federal army is actually doing on the ground. One has to come to the conclusion either Lagos is lying, and I don't think they are, I think they're quite sincere, or that the federal army of 80,000 brand new raw conscripts has gone out of control.
What about the bombing of Biafra? The federal government has claimed that they've only been attacking strategic targets.
Well, this is absolute nonsense. They may have given orders for the attack of strategic targets, but the pilots they're using are almost exclusively Egyptian. And I've examined too many sites of bombing raids to have any other conclusion that, almost without exception, they go straight for civilian centers. Anything that's protected by even light machine guns, they stay well away from. They just go down on schools, hospitals, and the African townships and the markets, all of which, during the course of working day, are crammed with women and children.
5 things you didn't know about Biafra. The genocide they erased. This is one of the most brutal genocides of the 20th century. Britain armed the killers.
Is the attitude of the Wilson government, which persists in supplying arms. I mean, do you see any logic in it? Today you send us hundreds of tons of milk, butter, sugar. At the same time, probably the one plane is leaving Gatwick, another plane is leaving to Lagos with arms and ammunition.
Do you believe that if Britain stopped supplying Nigeria with arms, the war would end?
I believe that it would be very near to an end. The end would be in sight.
Thousands of deaths from starvation. Here, the aid is distributed by a Catholic priest, elsewhere by Protestants. While the priests distributed food, nearby the English students found Biafran officials telling the children about the evils of Nigeria.
They are pursuing us, killing us. They are killing our parents, our brothers, our fathers, and even ourselves.
Children, it seems, must be told that Biafrans must fight or be massacred. The Nigerians have given some cause for the fear of massacre by bombing marketplaces like Kumaya, where scores of civilians were killed. For the Biafrans behind the lines, these attacks are proof of their leaders' claim that Nigerian policy is indeed genocide.
On May 29, July 29, September 29, 1966, genocide was committed against the Igbos. Will you let the world, through this medium, know the extent of this genocide? We know you established the Ojukeu Commission that looked into these genocidal acts. What were his findings, some of them that you can let the world know?
Well, that's no doubt. I mean, the findings, the report.
Okay, the report.
The report is available. Can be bought by anyone. It's been circulated all over Nigeria. It's not hidden. The first massacre of Igbos in the north, we could, in that report, it was stated that the first crew was 50,000. Then, later, in the same year, the universal massacre that took place across the whole of Nigeria, including the north and parts of the west, we're talking in terms of 700,000 killed. So if it's figures we're looking into, certainly they were very heavy. But when we're talking of genocide, it's intent that really matters. What was the aim of that? And it was very simple, and the language might make people shudder or remember. It was to impose the final solution to the Igbo problem in Nigeria. That is, when there are no more Igbos in Nigeria, then there will be no problem. I think if one thinks back, sometime you will know who used that term, referring to who.
Was the element of religion involved?
There are three areas that came together. There was certainly the ethnic one. There was at the same time the political one side. And when I say political, that is the search for power in the federation. And certainly the third was religious. But actually the Biafran problem was nothing except being genocidal. There was no distinction. The mere fact that you were an Easterner in those days labeled you fit only for one thing: death, and death at the hands of the Nigerian authorities. The Igbos and their associates were killed in practically every village in northern Nigeria. They were killed in many places in western Nigeria. They were in Lagos, even on Kata Bridge, the very center of Lagos. People were looked at and thought, oh, this looked an Igbo, and killed. The very first army officer killed in Lagos, actually, during that time, was from Calabar. Was killed on the bridge, and so on. Igbos were being hunted out and killed. The Igbos that remained in Lagos after the war began were herded together and detained without any trial or anything, no question of any legal rights. Till today, property of Igbos are still sequestered in various areas of Nigeria, and they have not been released, not all of them, to the Igbos, the original owners. Oh no, we're quite certain. In fact, the only reason it is not called or not accepted as genocidal is because of the Cold War. At that time, anything ethnic based was almost like an insult to humanity. And ethnicity became a term of abuse in politics, that's all. If it were today, certainly what happened in Nigeria is much, much worse than what you have seen of Rwanda not to talk about Eastern Europe.
The war aim of Biafra is purely to prevent ourselves being slaughtered, nothing more. We haven't got the sophisticated war aim of Nigeria to conquer, to overrun, to do something or the other. For us, it's merely to prevent. And if anybody is going to judge our success and failure in this war, it will have to depend on how much we have prevented the enemy from killing us. And the fact that we are here all indicates that we have been very successful.
Bosatt I nord, flyktet tilbake til sin hjemstat.
Shock. I think one can only say shock in this matter because the thing is so enormous, the crimes. Definite attempt clearing people of Eastern origin from face of the earth.
The Nigerian Army 2nd Division, commanded by Ibrahim Taiwo and Lieutenant Colonel Murtala Mohammed, ordered the massacre of Asaba people between October 7, 8 and 9 of 1967.
One of the worst tragedies of the war had occurred at Asaba and environs on its capture by federal troops. After the occupation of Asaba, they had embarked on an orgy of cold-blooded murder, with unarmed civilian residents of the town shot dead in large numbers. The sheer scale of the violence is to an extent encapsulated in this excerpt from the book, Asaba Massacre, Trauma, Memory and the Nigerian Civil War by Liz Bird and Fraser Ottenelli. Several hundred people were executed in groups all over town. Males who had been singled out were either shot on the spot or taken to the police station, the High Court on Upper Road, the soccer field or the riverbank where they were executed. Witnesses remember seeing the streets littered with corpses. In a desperate attempt to placate the soldiers, the Asaba community led by the Asaba of Asaba decided to give the soldiers a gift of £50 and woolen cloth, which was initially received. However, when two lots of emissaries with the same gifts failed to return, the signs of the danger were clear. In deeper desperation, the community decided to gather on October 7 in a reception for the federal troops on some show of solidarity. On the appointed day, almost 4,000 residents of Asaba gathered in the town center for the reception. However, hundreds of them were shot dead, firstly with rifles, then with machine guns. The killings continued for several days. By the time the soldiers finally grew aware of the violence, about 6,000 residents of Asaba had been killed.
In fact, what happened in Asaba was unfortunate.
And Yakubu Gowon declared no victor, no vanquish, but I'm here to counter such declaration that it was false and remains unfounded.
At the end of the war, you said there was no victor, no vanquished.
There was victor and there was vanquished. The victor are the people today that wants to remain one Nigeria. Why the vanquished are the former Biafran Republic people that said, no, we want the restoration of our Biafran, beloved Biafran Republic. We don't want to be part of Nigeria. The victor are those ones that gave £20 to the former Biafran Republic, and the vanquished are the former Biafran Republic people that received £20, no matter how wealthy or no matter the amount of money they had in their bank accounts before and after the war. The victor is the one that administered the government of Nigeria even up to this day, while the vanquished are the people that have not, they say you will never ever rule Nigeria again. Remember, they introduced Naira notes, Naira, which they claimed allegedly the full meaning of Naira is never allow Igbo rule again. That is Naira, never allow Igbo, never allow Igbos rule again. And Kobo, which means kill Ojukeu before others. Naira and Kobo, never allow Igbos to rule again. Kobo, kill Ojukeu before others. So the victor was the people that introduced that Naira and Kobo, and the vanquished were the people that Naira and Kobo was made against. So there was victor and there was vanquished.
What's called an obsession about the Igbos. Could you perhaps explain that to me?
Well, the Igbos are more or less the type of people whose desire is mainly to dominate everybody. If they go to a village, to a town, they want to monopolize everything in that area. If you put them in a labor camp as a laborer, within a year they will try to emerge as headman of that camp, and so on. Well, in the past, our people were not alive to their responsibilities.
2 million starving Igbos, many of them young children who'd suffered the horrifying effects of malnutrition during 2.5 years of war. Over 2 million civilians died in the war from starvation alone. With damage to property estimated at several £100 million, it was clear that the task of reconstruction was going to be immense. But as one civil war ended in Nigeria, the foundations of another were being laid in the Middle East through the activities.
The failure of the July coup to succeed at Enugu was the one that led to the civil war. How? If you can explain. Let me explain. Because the coup failed, Ojukeu, who was the governor of Eastern region at that time, was neither killed nor arrested. Ojukeu started actually contesting the legality of Gowon's taking over power. And it is this contestation of the legality that brought about the sharp division between the East and Lagos. All right? And it is this that led to Aburi. It is this that led to the Civil War. In fact, it is the one that was responsible. And in fact, I place the blame on the doorstep of those who did the coup of July 1966.
Nigerian government is a terrorist government. There is no doubt about this.
That's to Biafra.
Because we are talking about a civil war, the Nigerian Civil War, which was one of the world's great humanitarian crises of its time, still resonates in Africa. It was a war when the eastern part of Nigeria, which was mainly Christian, dominated by the Igbo tribe, broke away from Muslim-dominated West Nigeria.
In the past administration, our people felt very much marginalized more than they were ever marginalized. That was the reason that people were dedicated for Biafra.
Anyị nọ ahịa ka ọ dịrị ndị Igbo mma, ka ya lebusi na ndị Igbo. Anyị fụnọ ya bụ agenda ndị Fulani. Mana ahịa agwụ ndị Igbo elo nọ ebe a ka ya bụ ọlụ jedere. Anyị bụ ndị dị ndụ maka imirikiti na n'ime ya bụ ahịa. Anyị bụ ndị dị ndụ ka ọ dị ime kishọ na ụmụ anyị echefuru maka ọ dị izu nchefu. Ị na-anya today a na-ekwu okwu ịghọta na ụfọdụ aghọtara ọdụ nwe ife a na-ekwu maka ya bụ ahịa. So ka ya ala echefu na ya butere meeting anyị bịa n'ebe a.
The ruling party is the direct sponsor of terrorism and insecurity in Nigeria. My name is Martin Onovo. I said it.
My final word is that Nigeria doesn't need to fight another civil war. That Nigeria Biafra war, or the Nigerian Civil War, was enough for an all time. All we need to do is learn lessons. Today, people are denying the war story. People are denying the story. They are writing all manner of things about what caused the war, what did not cause the war. We cannot avoid it except we face the real issues, deal with them, and the issues we can deal with. Simple as that.
If I were to be a terrorist, I cannot cross any international border. It's as simple as that. The fact that I can travel freely around the world goes to show that the target of IPOB as a terror movement is a concoction by the Fulanis to hamstring us so they can come to our land and take it over. And we are fighting and we are dying. All these fronts I'm telling you about, people are dying every day. And we take care of their families. But not very long now. That thing the zoo has been asking for, we will give it to them.
So it is not everybody that took part in that wicked enterprise, in that pogrom against the defenseless Igbo people. And I've always said it. This country will never be normal until we kneel down and ask for forgiveness from Igbo for the wicked sins we've committed against them.
1,000 Igbo civilians were slaughtered in Nigeria. Britain, the same empire that colonised them, supplied Nigeria with weapons, bombs and pilots. Why? Because Shell had oil contracts they weren't about to lose. Number 2, they used hunger as a weapon. 2 million Biafran civilians starved to death. The Nigerian government bombed aid planes, blocked food deliveries, and the world stayed silent. This wasn't war, this was extermination. Number 3, Biafra built its own tech. They didn't crawl, they soared. They built their own rockets, their own weapons.
We are Biafrans. We can never, never be Nigerians. Ever Biafran, never Nigerian. Oh Biafra, our own land. My father, don't you worry. If I have to die in the battle, never mind, we shall meet again. My mother.